I can still hear the faint clink of silverware and the polite laughter from that Thanksgiving dinner. The beachfront villa in Galveston, Texas was glowing with amber light, casting golden reflections on the faces that hadn't set foot in my bakery in over 4 years. Even though it was just 3 blocks from our family's old accounting firm. "Harper," my cousin Julia's voice rang out, cutting clean through the sound of pouring wine and chatter. "Tell everyone your big news." I glanced up, already bracing myself. Julia sat poised in her tailored cream suit, her manicure pristine, her fiancé beaming beside her. She held her wine glass like a trophy. That same satisfied smile tugged at her lips, the one she wore whenever she reminded everyone that she was the family's golden child. "I just passed the bar," she announced, glowing. "Starting at a major firm in Dallas next month." The table broke into applause. Uncle Ron raised his glass. "To Julia Mitchell, the pride of the Mitchell family." I took a slow sip of my cinnamon chai, thinking about the proposal drafts waiting on my kitchen counter. The ones for expanding Harper's Hearth into a second location. But no one here knew about that. To them, I was still the one who bakes, instead of building something real. "And you, Harper?" Aunt Janet turned to me, her voice sticky sweet with feigned interest. "Still making cupcakes?" I smiled calmly. "It's called Harper's Hearth Bakery now, and yes, I'm still running it." "Still needing dough, huh?" Julia chuckled, exchanging a grin with our cousin Leo. "If you ever want a real paycheck, I'm sure my firm's always hiring legal assistants." I traced the edge of my plate, remembering the deal I'd finalized that morning. A 3-year supply contract with a regional hotel chain, worth more than Julia's starting salary. But they didn't know that. Not yet. "It keeps me plenty busy," I replied. "Busy enough to afford this view," Uncle Ron joked, gesturing at the sea outside. I nearly laughed. If only they knew I owned not just the bakery building, but 2 rental properties along that same street. "I get by," I said with a smile. Julia launched into another drawn-out story about her latest big client, a corporate merger worth millions. Everyone leaned in, hanging on her every word, just like they always did. Julia, the perfect one, law school at Northwestern, fast-tracked to junior partner, and now climbing the ladder in a downtown Dallas firm with the Mitchell name stamped on every press release. And me? I was the curious detour. The girl who left college at 22 to attend culinary school and renovated a forgotten seaside pub into Harper's Hearth. Now a thriving coastal destination that brought in more per quarter than their firm did all year. "I just closed the Carter Tech settlement," Julia said, swirling the last of her Cabernet. "Their legal team looked stunned when I flagged the oversight in their breach clause. Now they've retained us exclusively." I didn't blink at the mention of Carter Tech. If only Julia knew who quietly held a controlling interest in their new headquarters, through a shell company managed by me. "I just don't understand it," Grandma murmured later, as I dried the last serving tray. She stood beside me, hands wringing, eyes searching. "You're smart, Harper. You could have had all of this. Julia's job, that kind of success." "Not everyone dreams of boardrooms and billables," I said, folding a dish towel. "But you're capable of so much more," she pressed. "Look at Julia. Her designer wardrobe, that new Tesla, that condo in Uptown. Don't you want real success?" I thought of my penthouse, the one I'd purchased last month through a trust under my investment group. Top floor, ocean view, mortgage-free. "I'm happy with my path," I said gently. Grandma frowned. "I just worry," she sighed. "Restaurants are so unstable. What if you want a family one day? How will you manage?" I almost smiled, thinking about my growing portfolio, 6 properties, equity in 2 food startups, and silent capital in a regional grocery chain. The bakery was just my first move, a foundation for something bigger. Later that night, as coats were pulled on and cheeks kissed goodbye, Julia stopped me at the door, standing by the old brass coat. "So," she said, tilting her head, "still baking, or are you finally ready to do something real?" "Hey, I meant it about the firm," Julia said, her manicured hand landing gently on my arm. "Uncle Ron could get you into compliance. You'd move up quick. Cushy hours, great benefits. Thanks, I replied, with an easy smile, stepping back just enough to free myself. But I'm exactly where I want to be. Julia's smile thinned just for a second. Harper, seriously, you can't run a bakery forever. Don't you want to be somebody? If she only knew. I was somebody. Bigger than any of them had imagined. And tomorrow they'd see it for themselves. I checked my watch. Gotta run, early start. She raised a brow, smirking. Right. Wouldn't want to burn those croissants. I drove back toward town, headlights cutting through the coastal fog, until I reached the quiet street where Harper's hearth stood, golden lights still glowing from the late-night prep team. But I didn't stop in the kitchen. I entered through the alley door, the one that led upstairs to the real headquarters, a sleek, minimalist office tucked above the scent of cinnamon rolls and espresso. Most thought I spent my days frosting cupcakes and clearing dishes. What they didn't see was the network I'd built behind that charming storefront. 7 LLCs, 2 property groups, and an investment portfolio that had doubled in the last quarter alone. I slid into my leather chair, pulling out the file stamped Carter Tech portfolio. Tomorrow, Julia's beloved firm wouldn't be meeting with Carter Tech's new partners at a Dallas skyscraper. They'd be coming to my office above my bakery to finalize the asset deal. Because for 3 years now, I'd been buying up their surplus buildings, parking lots, and rental properties, one shell company at a time, with the help of their own legal team. I opened the final file, the merger agreement rolling it all under one name, Mitchell Bay Capital. A quiet nod to the family that never saw me coming. My phone buzzed. A text from Julia. Dinner was fun. Heads up, Carter Tech might visit your little shop tomorrow. Don't blow it. They're important. I laughed softly. Yes, Julia. Yes, y'all. I set the phone down without replying, a slow smile spreading across my face. Tomorrow would be unforgettable. The paperwork was straightforward. 5 years' worth of shell companies, land trusts, and joint ventures were finally merging under one name, Mitchell Bay Capital. Once signed, I'd quietly become the largest property owner along the Texas Gulf Coast, from Galveston to Port Arthur, without ever once setting foot in a law office. As I reviewed the final signatures, I thought about Julia's smug smirk over dessert, Grandma's hand-wringing in the kitchen, Uncle Ron's offhand jokes. They had no clue. While they chased promotions and applause, I'd been quietly acquiring the land beneath their very offices. And by tomorrow morning, everything would shift. I pulled into Harper's Hearth Bakery just before sunrise. My manager, Lila, was already unlocking the front door and setting up the espresso machine. The back room's all prepped, she said, handing me a fresh brew. But remind me again, why would a big investor meet here instead of a proper office? I just smiled, taking a sip. Sometimes the biggest moves happen in places no one expects. At 9:00 a.m. sharp, Charles Whitaker stepped through the front door. Despite being one of the most influential commercial developers in the region, Charles wore jeans and a navy quarter zip. No entourage, no briefcase, just the man who'd helped me secure nearly every strategic parcel over the last 4 years. "Morning, Miss Mitchell," he said with a grin. Then, louder, "For show, could I get a cappuccino?" I chuckled, slipping behind the counter. This was our routine. Me, the friendly baker, him, the low-key customer. No one would guess the magnitude of what was about to happen over a cup of coffee. As I frothed the milk, the bell above the front door jingled. I glanced up, and there she was. Oh yeah, impeccable as always, sharp suit, leather briefcase in hand, her heels clicking briskly across the floor. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, surprised, "I wasn't expecting to see you here this early." Charles turned with a calm smile. "I'd prefer to meet where the real decisions are made," he said, casting a knowing glance toward me. Julia blinked. "Wait, what are you doing here, Harper?" Charles accepted the cappuccino from my hands with a nod and his usual understated smile. "Ah, Miss Mitchell," he said, glancing at Julia, "your cousin makes the best coffee in Galveston. Care to join our meeting?" Julia blinked, visibly thrown. "Meeting?" "Yes," he replied smoothly. About the East Bay redevelopment project. He motioned toward the glass-paneled room at the back of the bakery. The one most customers assumed was for private brunch events. Shall we? Watched Julia mentally scramble, trying to reconcile how her firm's most influential client had wandered into my bakery for a meeting. Still, her curiosity got the better of her, and she followed us inside. The room was cozy yet professional. A wide walnut table, ergonomic chairs, soft pendant lighting. The only giveaway that this was more than a bakery office was the discreet security camera tucked into the corner and the leather document binder, already waiting at my seat. "I'll need a second witness," Charles said, settling in and retrieving a thick file from his bag. "Perhaps your cousin could assist?" Julia let out a quick, nervous laugh. "Harper? Oh no, she just runs the bakery." She looked at me like I was a barista who'd wandered into a boardroom. "She doesn't need to be involved in legal paperwork." Charles tilted his head. "On the contrary, she's the key party in this transaction." I sat calmly at the head of the table, fingers laced, watching Julia's confusion deepen. "Actually, Julia," I said, "you're the one who doesn't need to be here. But, since you are, you might as well witness something memorable." The front door chimed again. Grandpa and Uncle Ron entered, scanning the bakery until they spotted Julia, then glanced through the glass into the meeting room. "What's going on?" Grandpa asked, brows furrowed. "Why is Mr. Whitaker meeting you here?" Before Julia could even attempt an answer, Charles stood and addressed them warmly. "I invited them," he said. "It seemed only fitting to finalize this deal in the place where it all began." Julia's voice cut in, sharp and unsettled. What began?" I turned the binder slowly so it faced her, the gold-embossed logo gleaming in the light. Mitchell Bay Capital. I opened my laptop and mirrored the screen to the wall-mount projector. The title slide glowed bold and clear. Mitchell Bay Capital, Consolidation and Strategic Expansion. Below it, a detailed satellite map of Galveston's downtown corridor appeared. Entire blocks outlined, dozens of parcels illuminated in gold. Restaurant fronts, retail strips, parking lots, all under one name. "Mitchell Bay Capital," his voice uneven. "My company," I said, my tone even and steady. "You might recognize some of the holding groups," I added, clicking through the slides. "Coastal Nest Holdings, Gulfway Ventures, East Harbor Trust." Julia slowly lowered herself into a chair, her expression tight with shock. "Wait, those are the same properties we've been handling contracts for," she said, the color draining from her face. "We've written policies for years on those parcels. They're tied to Charles Whitaker's firms." "Not quite," Charles interjected, his voice smooth. "They belong to Harper. I've just been the intermediary, helping her acquire them quietly." That's not possible," Grandpa barked, his voice rising. "Harper runs a bakery. She couldn't possibly." I slid a thick folder across the table and flipped it open with calm precision. "The bakery was just the start," I said. 5 years ago, when I bought this building, I noticed how undervalued the street was. Everyone overlooked it. But I didn't. I turned another page, revealing charts and projections. "While you were all busy mocking my cinnamon rolls," I added with a wry smile, "I was building capital, attending development summits, partnering with investors, and assembling the largest private real estate portfolio in this city." Julia reached for the contract binder, flipping through the pages like she was trying to prove it was fake. But each page was legally sound, every signature real, every asset traceable. Her face shifted from denial to disbelief, and then to something quieter. "Oh, this is worth," she whispered. "This portfolio is worth hundreds of millions." "You own half of downtown," Grandpa muttered, stunned. "More than half," Charles added, a note of pride in his voice. "Your cousin has a rare eye for value," he said. She saw possibility where others saw a rundown strip of shops. Julia looked up slowly, eyes meeting mine. She had no words. For once, rather like buying a rundown bakery and turning it into the cornerstone of a real estate empire, Charles added with a wink. Grandpa sank into a chair, looking like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, voice small. "Would you have believed me?" I asked gently. "You were too busy assuming I was wasting my life frosting cupcakes." I paused. It was easier to let you all believe that, while I built something on my own terms. "But you wear an apron," Julia said, her voice cracking, still trying to piece it all together. "You?" I gave a calm, measured smile. "I wear a lot of things, Julia. Sometimes it's an apron. Sometimes it's a tailored blazer. The difference is, I never needed anyone else's title to validate my worth." Charles placed a sleep pen beside the contract binder with quiet ceremony. "Shall we make it official?" I signed first, hand steady. He followed, marking the date with a final flourish. And just like that, Mitchell Bay Capital became the single largest private landholder in Galveston. "Congratulations," Charles said, shaking my hand. "Though I'll miss our coffee meetings." "The heart's not going anywhere," I said with a laugh, "though I may need to expand once word gets out." That evening, after the stunned silence of my family's departure, I sat in my upstairs office, gazing out at the city lights, my city now, in more ways than one. My phone buzzed. A message from Grandma. "Can we meet, maybe? For breakfast?" I smiled. "Sure," I typed back. "I know a little place downtown. The owner's doing pretty well these days." Because sometimes success isn't loud. Sometimes it just smells like fresh bread and quietly buys the whole block. I closed my laptop with a quiet click and walked down the narrow stairs from my office. By tomorrow, the local headlines would read, "Mitchell Bay Capital consolidates coastal holdings. Youngest female investor behind the move." What tonight? Tonight, I still had a bakery to run. Because the biggest moves, the ones that shift legacies, don't always unfold in glass towers or downtown boardrooms. Sometimes they happen between sips of espresso and a slice of lemon loaf. In a place where the floors creak and the regulars know your name. If you've made it this far, thank you. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's ever been underestimated, passed over, or dismissed because your dreams didn't come in a shiny corporate box. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been doubted for following your own path? Mocked for dreaming differently? Share your story. Let's lift each other up and remind the world, success wears many faces. And if there's one piece of advice I can offer, it's this. Stop pouring your energy into proving yourself to people who've already made up their minds. Build anyway, quietly, consistently, boldly, until they can't look away. Wear the apron. Wear the heels. Wear whatever makes you feel powerful. Just don't forget, your worth was never theirs to define. I built this empire one batch of cinnamon rolls at a time. And if I can do that from a little corner of Galveston, you can too. Start where you are, keep showing up, keep building. Because sometimes the loudest statement you'll ever make is quiet, relentless, unstoppable success.